Renaissance man in that he is at once a technocrat, an artist, and a deeply spiritual person. He grew up in the challenging decades just after World War II, the 1950s and 1960s, which heavily influenced his life. He then attended American institutions of higher learning and became a corporate executive, diplomat, politician, entrepreneur, and academic. He began public service as Minister of Finance under President Charles Taylor during an extremely challenging period. Liberia was then emerging from years of civil war, and Ambassador Barnes served as the country's focal point in interaction with international financial institutions and donor nations. Um, he observed firsthand that the poverty trap in much of Africa was the result of ineffective leadership. And with the removal of President Taylor from office in 2003, he ran for president of Liberia in 2005. Although unsuccessful in his presidential bid, he was fully committed to securing a better future for the Liberian nation. When President Ellen Johnson became president, she appointed him first as ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations. As ambassador to the United Nations, he played a primary role in the lifting of the UN sanctions against Liberia by exploiting relationship with critical members of the UN Security Council and other member states. Later, Madame Salif appointed him as Liberia's ambassador to the United States. As ambassador, Ambassador Barnes established unprecedented outreach and inroads with the Liberian diaspora. He helped to create the Liberian Diaspora Advisory Board for the purpose of fully exploiting the breadth and depth of Liberia's diaspora. He forged the concept that the Liberian diaspora represents two important characteristics. Politically, they are Liberia's 16th county, and economically, they represent Liberia's middle class. Since 2010, the author has worked as a consultant in international political, social, and economic issues of Africa with an expertise in post-conflict environments. He lectures at the graduate schools of the University of Liberia and African Methodist Episcopal University. And I would be amiss if I do not add, Nathaniel Barnes has been married to his life's partner, Dawn, for over 40 years, and they have 6 adult children and 2 grandchildren. So welcome. Yes.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. What a wonderful introduction. Thanks very much.
Well, for those who don't know you, okay. So I read the book, and I guess before plunging into the book, I would ask why did you go into public service? So to get to know the man, Nathaniel Barnes, why did you choose public service as a life's career?
Well, interestingly enough, I come from a legacy of public servants. Maternally, my grandmother, my mother was a teacher, and she eventually owned a school in Liberia called the Barnes Foundation School. Her mother before her was a teacher. She was the founding principal of the Haywood Mission School on the Old Road. And her mother before her was a teacher also. So they've been public servants on my maternal side. On my paternal side, my dad was a public servant. He is one of those unique Liberians that have served in all 3 branches of government. He was, at one point in time, Solicitor General, Deputy Minister of Justice. He was also a member of the House of Representatives for a period of time, and then he became Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia. And his dad before him was also a servant, and before him also. So I come from a legacy of public service, and we have, in my family, have been taught that the way to the light, the way to enlightenment is through service. So I'm intrinsically a servant. And when you're in an environment like we are all involved in Liberia, you find that there are many, many needs. And while I'm not one to apologize in any way, shape, or form into the circumstances into which I was born through the accident of birth, I also am very, very aware that there is an old adage that says, of those to whom much is given, much is required. So I do feel a moral, even a spiritual obligation to reach out and help and serve, especially those that are marginalized and worse off than I am. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Jackie, I can't hear
Sorry.
you.
Oh, sorry. I said I took a lot of notes. So, the topic of the title of the book, Left Brain, Right Brain, right? You said the left side is the analytical side, and the right side is the creative side. But when you balance both sides, you get the aha moment, right?
Yeah,
You think outside of the box, right? Now, so you're challenging us. You said to us in your introduction or preface that when you read the book and looking at your drawings, you want us to find a common thread throughout the book. The thing that when we get to the end of the book, we will say, aha, this is
that's
what
right.
you meant by saying
That's
the
that's
right
right.
brain and the left side of the brain, the right side of the brain should come together. You balance both sides and you get this aha moment. So,
Yeah, I think. I'm
uh-huh.
sorry.
No, it's
No,
okay.
I'm saying I think that we should all focus on trying to be more holistic. You know, the left side, as you mentioned, of the brain is more analytical, problem solving, and the right side is more artistic and sort of free spirited. And I think that once we are able to get to a point where we have successfully merged the two, where we can exploit the best of both sides of our brain, we'd be better, more holistic people, more holistic humans. And the drawings you see in the book, sometimes one would look at it and say, but what do these drawings have to do with any of this analytical stuff this fellow is saying? But somewhere, sometimes you will see, if you read somewhere in the book, you may remember an image that was drawn and say, I see how this image, which is this right side image, is linking to the left side image, left-sided image. So I don't mean to be boastful or anything about it, but it's a challenge. It is a challenge to be able to find that point of equilibrium. Okay, and I think it's the best thing that we all need to sort to accomplish, because it makes us more wholesome people, more wholesome thinkers.
Yeah, and the back of the book is introspection, right?
That's correct. That is
Yes,
correct.
it's
That is the
introspection.
name of that drawing.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Okay. So and in the book, you talk a lot about how growing up you were always a quiet child, right? And you say there is a
Mhm.
voice that doesn't use words. Listen. And when I read that, I thought about what Professor Nangbe and I discussed on the literary hour when we talk about chi, right? The personal soul. There is something that your own personal God, as you say. And numa, right, is the Greek word for breath, for the soul. So I thought that that was very, when you say that there's a voice that doesn't use words, listen. And I thought that was very, so now here's the book. And I made so many notes. So forgive me. I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
Um, so first, the first one is about globalization. You call it a
Mhm.
double-edged sword,
Yeah.
and you said that with globalization there are two different. So you either stay on the cutting edge or you're on the bleeding edge, right? But
Right.
if wherever whichever edge that you find yourself, there are parallels in human suffering, regardless. And you juxtapose when you were up country in Liberia to September 11th, and you explain that, look, no matter where you find yourself, but the you say that, like, Africa must not be on the bleeding edge. We have to be on the cutting edge. So my question to you is, when you said that globalization brings in its wake interdependence, right?
Mhm.
Because whether you are on the bleeding edge, or you're on the cutting edge, you both need something from each other, right? So
Yeah.
it made me think of the of Thomas Friedman, the Lexus and the olive tree, if you remember. When he said that there's a conflict between globalization and tradition and culture. Hence, Lexus is the globalization and the olive tree is tradition. How can a country like Liberia, who I assume, which I assume is on the bleeding edge, how does it move to the cutting edge? Or Africa for that matter? Ambassador, can you hear me?
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
So did we lose Ambassador Barnes?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so maybe I should read a portion of his book. And if you haven't purchased his book, please purchase Left Brain, Right Brain. Ambassador Barnes says that Africa has to be on the cutting edge of globalization, because if we are on the bleeding edge, we do not get the benefits. So even though we are interdependent, but one part of the world is getting more than the other part. So Africa must move from the bleeding edge to the cutting edge. And he says that the fight must be national introspection. So if Liberia wants to take advantage of globalization, he wants a critical, honest, no holds barred look at ourselves. And we have been doing that on different talk shows. We've been doing that even in Liberia, right? So he's saying that the first thing that you have to do is look at yourself. No magnitude of the $8 can change Africa. Only Africans can change Africa for the better. So that's on page 9 of his book, right? And then he says there must be national soul searching. So I guess we have to come together as a people and search ourselves to see how we can move our country forward. Ambassador Barnes goes on to say that Africa must be prepared to adopt a mechanism of governance that will be best for all in the long run, regardless of social or economic standing in the society, right? And then, of course, he says education is the most comprehensive and inclusive sense of the term, must become a continental preoccupation. So when we were talking about the Lexus and the olive tree, right? So although globalization has been touted as the be all or an end all, yes, he's back.
Yeah, I guess that plane you had about your bad day ended up with me also. Sorry about that.
No, Ambassador.
My internet just dropped. I'm so sorry.
No. What we did, we started to talk about the 5 interdependent elements of globalization, and I just read a paragraph, and then you came back. Yeah. So
Okay.
you call
no
for
the issue
this
on the issue of the double-edged nature of,
yes.
of double-edged nature of globalization. A good example is, you are right, it is the globalization, a primary ingredient of globalization is interdependency.
Mm-hmm.
But in the past, it has been more dependency because of absence of self-worth, okay, and an understanding of value, okay. For example, many years ago, 50 years ago, when very wealthy countries that needed our natural resources wanted to exploit our natural resources, they will come and say to us, well, we need to engage, negotiate, and we want to exploit your iron ore or your diamonds or your gold or whatever. And then we say, okay, but we'd go to those negotiations with absolutely no idea of what value we owned as a people, as a nation. But the other side had already done their research through the geological surveys and from satellites and all these wonderful things and get express and all that. And they would know very well what the values are. Okay. That was the first thing. So we had a basic absence of knowledge. Okay. The other thing was our traditions and our practices, okay, created hurdles. There is an old adage or old story about when the West would come to countries like Liberia, they says, look, this thing is going to be easy. We will get what we want. The reason being there are three things. Whoever they sent to negotiate will exhibit three characteristics. They're stupid, they're corrupt, and they are cheap. In other words, they don't understand anything about what they're negotiating about. So we can guide them because we have the knowledge. Number two, they're corrupt. So we'd be able to buy anything they want by bribing them. Okay. And the interesting thing about it is not only are they corrupt, but they're cheap. What they ask for will be so little that we can afford it easily. Okay. But globalization has really changed that and become a real cutting edge. So it now provides countries like ours access to, first and foremost, information. For example, the World Wide Web is an incredibly powerful tool. So now, the same scenario, when we go now getting our negotiating team together to go and talk about exploiting our natural resources, they now have access to a huge knowledge base. Okay, so even we may not have the expertise internally, we know where to go to find it. Okay, so then we now can go and have the exact same information and data that the other side has privy to, has access to, which puts us in a much better position to negotiate. Okay, and then again, with globalization, we begin to see best practices. The world is now a smaller place. We have access to all of these best practices, and we begin to understand the impact that corruption is having on our own progress. So it does become a cutting edge, better knowledge, better access, better access to successful practices. But if we don't change, then we are on the bleeding edge because we're always going to be cut up. Okay, so we can use globalization as and be on the cutting edge to remove that dependency and make it more interdependent. So when they do come and want to take, mine our gold, diamonds, or whatever natural resources we have, we can then say, okay, we want to do this, but first and foremost, we must be treated as equal partners. This is not a matter of mine being dependent on you to bring expertise and knowledge and money. It's a matter of how can we negotiate so that everyone wins. And the other thing about globalization that's really good is we now have access to multiple partners. We can say, no, I don't want to deal with you because you don't want to be fair. I'll talk to somebody else. You know, I'll talk to Singapore, I'll talk to Vietnam, or I'll talk to China or Russia for that matter. Okay, is how we use the tool to pursue our own interests. That's the cutting edge.
Said, what for the dynamism is you listed what do we want, what must we do to get what we want, and are we willing to do what we must do to get what we want? Those were the three questions.
Cardinal questions.
Yeah. So okay. So coming back to this area of national introspection, in order for us to be on a cutting edge, Liberia must know what it wants.
Right.
And that will come from the national introspection and national consultation. So how do we go about with this introspection to decide what we want and how to get where we're going?
The very first thing we need to face the stubborn facts, like my grandma used to say. We are not a reconciled people. We are not a reconciled people, in my humble opinion, because we have lived a period for long, our entire national life has been one of denial. There are certain things, very difficult things that have happened that we've chosen to sweep under the rugs and not pay attention to it. Okay, but now the chickens are coming home to roost. So we need to sit back as a people and say, okay, what did we do wrong? Without trying to blame anybody. You know, the problem we have in Liberia, where we are today, is all of our fault. It's no one group or one person's fault. It's all of our fault. So we need to sit together and say, okay, here are the issues. How do we address them? Okay, and sometimes that's hard because the truth and the fact can hurt nationally. Okay, so we need to sit together as a family, under the Palava hut, okay, and address these hard, difficult issues. How do we do that? I have a couple of ideas. For example, our education system is in a complete mess right now. We all know that. There's no secret. And we are not a reconciled people. So how can we fix that? Maybe we can use our education system as a tool towards reconciliation, as one tool towards reconciliation. What if we got 15 counties? Okay. What if we created very large boarding schools, one within each county? I don't know if you're old enough, Jackie, but there used to be a school in Liberia when I was growing up called Tubman High. It's still there, as a matter of fact. And when it was established, it was built by the American government after the format of a typical American high school. There were over 2,000 students at Tubman High. Okay, many of them. Excellent education they provided. What if we created boarding schools like Tubman High in all of our counties? And let's, for talking purposes, say each school accommodates 2,000 students. But we say, okay, of those 2,000 students, 100 should be from each of the remaining 14 counties. So let's say a school in Lofa County, this boarding school in Lofa County. 1,400 of those students will be from the 14 remaining counties, 100 from each county. The remaining 600 students are from Lofa County. What you have in that particular instance is a microcosm of Liberia. Okay, you got young people that are competing together academically. At some point in time, it will get to a point where that young Grubo fellow and that young Lawman fellow, or that young Kisi girl and that young Crew girl will begin to say, there ain't no difference between us. We may speak a different language, but we are the same. It will be an excellent way to create a certain homogeneity among our young people. And interestingly enough, of those 100 kids that came, for example, from Kipmount, not all of them will return to Kipmount. So we get a better mix of our society, and our kids begin to see that there is really no difference among us, whether it's being ethnic, social, or whatever. The other thing that could work is, why don't we start a student work study program that says every summer, every holiday, the kids, senior in high school, must go and do work, community service. But you're not allowed to do your service in your county. So if you're from Maryland County, you must go to Kidmount to do your community service. If you're from Kidmount, you go to Nimba to do your community. And while you are in a village in Nimba building a well or trying to construct a clinic or refurbish a clinic, after a few days, a few weeks, you begin to realize ain't no difference between us. We are one. It creates a certain commonality. That is how we can begin to address these skeletons in our closets, okay, where we begin to describe people because of their ethnicity. You go to a community, you say, oh, I'm looking for the carpenter that lives here. Oh, what carpenter? He's tall, Oh, you mean that Gio man? Well, why do you associate the person with, we need to change that attitude. We need to change that way of thinking. I said the other day on another interview, I said, show me any institution in Liberia, show me the head of that institution, and I'll be able to effectively predict the predominance of an ethnic group in that particular ministry or particular institution. It shouldn't work that way. So, we do need to more or less sit down and face these very difficult issues, okay, that have haunted us, that have plagued us. The other matter that, we are not irreconciled with that, the other issue is corruption. Until we can address and kill corruption, we ain't going to go anywhere. Let me speak bad English for a while. It's not going to work. But those are some of the things I'm thinking about when I talk about the various aspects of change and moving forward.
We're going to go through the book. And one thing I found interesting when you were talking about multilateralism, with this theme going back, because education in the book is further down. It's about when you talk about you have to bolster organizations such as the United Nations, the Bretton Woods Foundation, and things like that. So I guess this question is my question. How can you really reinvent the United Nations to be able to appeal to more people, to help more people? Do you think that we don't have to reinvent the permanent members of the Security Council?
Absolutely, that needs to be done. In the book, I mentioned something called inclusive exclusivity. The 5 permanent members of the Security Council,
yes,
are the power brokers of whatever happens anywhere on this globe. That needs to change. Okay, yes. And the irony behind the whole thing is the largest constituency at the United Nations is Africa.
Yes.
There are more African countries at the United Nations than any other continental group, a geographic group. Yet and still, Africa doesn't have any representation on the permanent file. And it needs to change. And the way you can change it is by making demands. We need to understand something fundamental about foreign relations and foreign policy. The primary driver of foreign policy for any nation is its national interests.
Yes.
Okay. But we need to begin to sit and, what? Liberia, we have challenges, but you know what? We have value also. We have worth. It also has to do with creating a unity. Okay. Maybe the OAU needs to begin to mix, the African Union needs to begin to make some demands. Okay. Because there is a huge imbalance in global leadership that needs to be addressed and fixed. Why is it that Africa, being as wealthy as it is, we have a large majority, lion's share of natural resources on the globe, yet and still we are among the poorest? We need to face those very difficult, hard questions and begin to say to the wealthy countries, yeah, you want to help, but if you're going to help, you're going to help on our terms. But most importantly, we need to go back to the 3 cardinal questions. We need to know what our terms are. We need to know what we want. Okay. If we do not address the 3 cardinal questions in a comprehensive manner, we will always be like this imbalance, global imbalance.
There's a theme that, there's a sentence that runs throughout your book, and I'll come back to that after we're done with the diaspora, because I really enjoy reading that chapter, because you talk about the historical diaspora, the crisis diaspora, and the special diaspora. Whereas the historical diaspora are people who left Liberia way back when on scholarship and everything, and they remain in the United States, right? The crisis diaspora, the people who left because of the war, because of conflict. And the third special diaspora are people who just are interested in Liberia and want to see Liberia go forward. So you call it the Liberia middle class. The diaspora is Liberia's middle class. The remittances and things that have flowed from the diaspora to Liberia. You talk about it. You said that it's a lot. It's a lot of money that have been sent. But then you did something that I thought was very unique. Not only in 2009, not only did you start this Diaspora Advisory Board, you started the genesis of the Diaspora Direct Investment. Can you tell how's it going and what's it all about?
Well, the whole concept of the genesis of that was, look, the diaspora over the last 10 years has been, the average remittances, net remittances, has been about $550 million. In
Yes.
other words, the diaspora has remitted to Liberia over $500 million. Now, when you look at, do an analysis of those remittances, you will find that they are really small amounts. And that amount, basically, they are 550 million, includes the formal sector. In other words, using money, Western Union, MoneyGram, SendWave, all these different mechanisms that we have. But there is also the informal sector. Somebody, is living in New York and they're about to travel to Monrovia, and I say, oh, when you go to Monrovia, please get the envelope and give the envelope to my entity on Crown Head, that $200 inside. When you include that amount, it even gets larger. Okay. When we did the analysis, we found that two things. Much of the remittances was comprised of monies from disposable income of the diaspora. In other words, John T. Diaspora received his pay, he paid his mortgage, paid his card note, did grocery, all the things he needed to do. What was left was his disposable income. It was from that amount that he dispatched $50 or $100 or whatever it was to a relative in Liberia for their own upkeep. Okay. So we said to ourselves, gosh, if $500 million represents a portion of disposable income, the capital base must be significant. Okay. And we also did some analysis that showed that the Liberians in the diaspora have a certain level of sophistication when it comes to investing. Okay. They may have a 401k, they may have a savings account, they may do dabble in electronic, play on the stock market, but they have some level of sophistication. So what if we could create a model where we engage a local brokerage investment house in the US? Okay. Why do we do that? Because they are regulated, they are managed by a very strong regulatory framework. So the likelihood of your trust will go up when you're dealing with such an institution. Okay. And then we say, okay, Jackie, you got based on our analysis or information you're giving to us, you have a savings account of $10,000. Why don't you just take 5% of that and invest it in the Diaspora Development Fund? Okay, but you will not send it to Liberia because your trust is not there that that money you send will be used for the purpose it's supposed to be used for. You will send it to this US-based investment fund manager. Then we say to the fund manager, can you match it? So now let's say for talking purposes, you did $1,000. Okay, and the fund manager receives it, he matches it. Now that's $2,000. He then will have to find projects in Liberia that are developmental oriented, but will turn a profit. Okay, so he invests, the project's completed, it turns a profit. You get earnings on your investment. He gets his cut. The government of Liberia, the people of Liberia get a project. That was the basic rudimentary concept behind it. Okay.
Did it ever materialize? Were there projects ever?
Yeah,
did they have
I was
projects?
get to that part there now, but the Liberian part of it now. Okay. On the other side, we found that much of the remittances from the diaspora into Liberia were immediately consumed. So whenever the recipient of that $50 or $500 or $100 received it, it was used immediately for food, school fees, transportation, rent that was immediately needed. So it was not invested. Okay. We mentioned that the remittances is $500 million. In Uganda, for example, it's several $billion. And because the reason why is much of it is for investment purposes. Okay, so it's a matter now of sort of creating an environment where people begin to understand how to invest those remittances. The project didn't go off because after I left the embassy, it sort of died in its tracks, died on the vine. There are some Liberians that are still interested in doing this. Okay, and we are on again, off again, looking at how to do that and make it happen so that it will be effective. The most important thing here is creating trust, because the Liberian diaspora, yeah, it's 550 million they're remitting annually, but at the same time, can they develop trust in a system where they can take a certain portion of their particular saving or investment portfolio and put it towards that purpose? Okay, there are many Liberians that will tell you stories where they've sent tens of thousands of dollars to family members or friends in Liberia to do a project, and that it never, it never happened because they ate the money. Okay, to use the Liberian expression. So it unfortunately at the embassy it died in its tracks. I don't know what happened to it there, but again, as I mentioned, there are still one or two Liberians. I myself, being one of those, who's looking at how we can revitalize and make this work, because I do believe that it could be a major source of creating a lot of self-reliance. Because the problem with foreign direct investment is there are a lot of conditionalities. When countries come and say, okay, we want to invest, they have conditionalities. And sometimes it's not consistent with our own vision for our growth and prosperity.
Okay. So coming now to, sorry, I have so many so many questions. You talk about, so in the book there's this sentence that it changes. Liberia is in trouble. Liberia is in transition. Liberia is at the crossroads, depending on which chapter you're reading. These are all thesis statements that take you in a different direction. But you say that Liberia's trouble started from two things. The complex way it was created as a nation, right, is one.
Mhm.
And even now, with the contested histories, it seems as if we just cannot, we just celebrated 200 years. And I argued with people who, a lot of them said, oh, it's nothing. And I said, look, for a country, there's no other African country that has been free 200 years, and knowing Liberia's history, Liberia has struggled to be where it is. Last Friday we read what is his name, Blyden, and
Mhm.
Blyden gives all the he gives all of the problems that Liberia has. But one thing Blyden says, and I want to read it, he says, the whole of the present system in Liberia, constructed in experience, may die out, but Liberia will live. Death
No
is
doubt.
sometimes necessary in the process of national as well as vegetable growth. Except a grain of corn fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. Liberia will live. And I like that because I feel like, this little country, the world wrote its epitaph before they wrote its birth certificate. So many people did not
Very
think Liberia
interesting.
would make it, So when I hear you saying that, what, we are still struggling with the birth pangs of our founding, and you quote a Liberian scholar who says is that the state of our country in 2007 a consequence of the recent civil war and is a consequence of a divided society, and you see that when you're talking to people, you see the division. And I had thought that, like the pandemic, that the bicentennial will be a bridge for Liberians to say, you know what? Yes, that those things happen. But we are going now to the future, and we are going as one people.
Couldn't
What
agree with
can
you more.
we do besides this national introspection? What can we do for the coming together of all these groups in Liberia? What is it that we can do?
The last chapter in my book is entitled "Endless Road to Nowhere," and it's a pretty tough criticism of Liberia. And in a nutshell, it basically is saying that Liberia has wealth. Liberia, the thing, one of the most important characteristic of Liberia, of the Liberian people, is their resiliency. I'm Liberian, and you may say I'm being biased, that's fine. I have never seen or experienced or engaged in more resilient people than ourselves. We are resilient and we are tenacious. And that is what has kept us, as Blyden has said, in this process of coming up when everyone thinks that we're going to go down. We need to grasp that particular quality and ensure it's ingrained in how we think and how we exist. And the way to do that is to make sure we get leadership, okay, that has those particular values. Unfortunately for Liberia, and I said it in the book, we have been led by politicians as opposed to leaders. And I will say this to my grave. I know I say it often. There's a distinct difference between a politician and a leader. A politician, as we know it in the Liberian sense of the word, has one tool and one tool alone to address the issues and problems. It's called politics. The leader, on the other hand, has an array of tools and solutions available to him or her, okay, to address the issues. For example, we got a public health problem, okay, or better yet, we had a fiscal problem, collecting taxes and meeting our particular expenditure requirements. The leader will look and find scientific, quantifiable, quantitative solutions on how to address it. How do we expand our tax base? Are there creative means that we can use to reduce our costs and all of that? You find all these, he has these tools available. The politician will resort to politics, to rhetoric. Oh man, you don't worry about this thing. When I get there, I will do this and we shall do this. And they say all these fancy rhetoric and words, and nothing gets done. So Liberian people need to understand something very, very fundamental, especially at this point in our existence. My people, you have power. You have power. Unfortunately, you've either let people take your power away from you or you've abused your power. We need to understand that everybody, regardless of their background, their ethnicity, their social standing, whatever, they have power. And they have the power to change Liberia. And the only way we can do this is to understand that we all must take a leadership role. You know, the leadership doesn't have to do with one of the president of Liberia. You must lead in your classroom, in pursuit of excellence, of being a great student. You must lead in your family by living as an exemplary parent, okay? You must lead in your various social interactions. We have power to lead. We must corral and use it for the benefit of all of us. I don't want to preach, but it is very, very important because we need to move. The paradigm must be flipped on its ears. Turn, like we say in Liberia, we got to chakla the whole thing because we are on the abyss, on the edge of the abyss. If we don't fix this now, we're going to fall into the abyss and be like a stateless country. I don't want to call any country name that I know is in that state right now, but we want to avoid that. And now is an excellent opportunity. Why? Because our young people are ready.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. We were moved to the
As a
education
result
part.
of our crisis,
Yeah.
as a result of our crisis, there are many young, quote unquote, indigenous Liberian kids that cannot speak a dialect. Is that good? No. But is that bad? No. Okay. What holds them all together now is the experience of hardship, the experience of poverty, the experience of marginalization. Within that, they need to look introspectively and say, you know what? I'm going to change this. I'm not just going to go with the flow as it's always been. We have to step outside of the box and do what needs to be done. This
And
is in the hands of the young people.
when you're talking about civil society, I guess, standing up, everybody being a leader, I'm reminded about how democracies die, because in that book, the author said that constitutions cannot act alone. Democracy's greatest protector is not the constitution, but rather democratic norms, right? He said, because authoritarian government, they use the constitution too, and one of the things that we see now is that he says that in politics, you can be rivals, not enemies, so you're rivals because you're competing for opposition, but that should not make you enemies. Now,
Right.
civil society, civil society coming up, getting the democratic norms, right? They are the guardrails, because an authoritarian leader, when he's trying to change things, he hit against those guardrails, he bounces back, the guardrail stands. For every hit, the guardrail either stands strong or becomes weaker, right? And so democracy depends on the strengthening of those guardrails. So when we say, oh, the constitution, yeah, the constitution is there, but it's the democratic norms that, it's like I listened to somebody the other day. I'm sorry, I know it's your interview, but I want to explain this,
It's an interesting
where
discussion.
this guy, he did an experiment where there was an aquarium, right? And the fish would swim from one end to the other end. And then he took a clear plexiglass and he put the glass in the middle. So the fish would hit the glass and go back. Every time the fish would hit the glass, it will go back. So the fish learned to swim in smaller circles. And he did that for a long period. So when he removed the plexiglass, the fish could not even swim to the end of the aquarium because it had learned to swim in smaller circles. So
and that is precisely what has happened.
Yeah, if we teach our young people, I always say that, we were here and people were saying that, oh, there were some schools that needed bathrooms, but the NGO, they didn't build a bathroom. I'm like, this is the most basic. Civics is patriotism in action. Go build your bathroom. Government can't do anything. So I think that, like you say, these smaller groups, we have to have smaller groups that will talk and say, look, this is our country and we need to do this, I mean, a lot of people, they know that I always talk about Zambia and they say, oh, you're going to move to Zambia. But when I go there, I see, the schools that we are building is the villagers that are building it. It's not the government,
right.
It's not the government.
Interestingly enough, I'm sometimes I'm amazed as what we accept. We become complacent and we accept. Yes. I cannot put my head around something that's, for example, happens in Liberia. We are categorized as one of the poorest countries on the globe.
Yeah.
Can somebody please explain to me why the president pro tempore of our legislature, of the Senate in our legislature, makes more money than the president pro tempore of the American Congress? Please, I need to understand that. I need to get my head around it. Why is it that the teacher, an average teacher in Liberia, makes an average of $150 a month on average?
And that's your call to action. Your call to action, you have 5. The disparities in our society, you say legislatures earn 100 times more than teachers. That's one.
There you go.
Empowerment, but so we need empowerment of Liberian businesses. You know, there are certain things when you go to the commerce ministry, there are certain businesses that are marked only for Liberians, but they're not following that. You know, they're not following that. And then you said compensation of civil servants who have provided vital services, which is like the Ebola, the COVID, right? And I guess this call to action are more just lists, because you say also people make grandiose relocation plans when basic services are lacking. Like, let's make a new city, but the basic services are lacking in this one. How are you going to build a new city? And then of course continues corruption. You know, the corruption goes on, and you cannot. Yeah, you cannot.
You know, and the truth of the matter is, people need to understand that until they begin to demand this in their leaders, we're going to be standing and spinning in the same spot. And like I keep saying, they just need to stop and say to themselves, I have power. I can do this. I don't have to just follow the traditional crowd, you know. And that's what I'm saying. We do the chocolate holding. We do the chocolate and then fix it. Okay? Because I don't see how we can pay a teacher $150 a month and pay a legislator $15,000 a month. You put a teacher here, you put a legislator here. Given our experience, the Liberia experience right now, who brings more value? Who brings more value in that particular instance? I mean, it doesn't take it is not rocket science to answer the question. I'm sorry, I'm becoming emotional here, because these are the things that we as everyday folks, you're not a nobody. People have made you made you to think that you are nobody, that you have no power, you just follow like a sheep. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. Begin to say no. Begin to ask yourself the 3 cardinal questions, even in your personal life. If you don't know what you want, you ain't gonna get it.
Yeah, you know? And now we move to are we ready to fix our broken education system? And I let me just give some statistics so people can know. Say currently, this is from population control, World Bank, and population review. Currently, 60% of Africa's population is under 25. In 2040, there will be 2 billion people in Africa. The youthful budge may not be the dividend that people want. It might also be the harbinger of violence and conflict. Absolutely. Liberia's population, according to the World Bank for 2020, 5.058 million, right? Liberia has one of the highest population growth rates in the world. From 1960 to 2012, Liberia's population grew over 200. Youth account for 65% of Liberia's population, but youth employment is 85%. Now, how can we change that? You know, it's very interesting when people say, oh, let's bring companies and think industrialization, because it's almost like the West, they keep talking about this 4th industrial revolution, which is artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. The machines are doing the work. So people who are unionizing, they are even fighting for the jobs, because the jobs can be done by a machine. They can even deliver your groceries, you know? So with all of this, we need to retrain our people. We need to look at more innovative way of teaching, you know, and we need skills. The former president of the African Development Bank, Kaberuka, he said, you know, people like to talk about, oh, like Africa need doctors, they need, you know, lawyers, Africa needs also technicians. They need nurses. They need the middle rung. They need this, but they also need the people underneath. So I come to you. I don't want to belabor the point. Now, how can we fix our educational system in Liberia?
You know, we've had many good plans, but they sit on the shelf and they get dust, collect dust. In my mind, the fundamental challenge with education in Liberia is it has always been underfunded. We haven't funded it correctly. For example, I'm willing to bet a nickel right now. If you look at the budget for the education ministry in Liberia, I'm willing to say easily 85% of that budget is for salaries and recurring expenses. So what portion of it is going to be used to build schools, to buy computers, to do all the things, build a better curriculum and all those things? What is fundamentally happening is there is not enough money being put, or investment being put in education. I had proposed we create a way to do this. There are certain commodities, in an economy that are what they call inelastic, price inelasticity, basically. In other words, a bottle of beer, okay? A bottle of club beer, let's say for talking purposes, it costs $2, $2 for a big bottle of club beer. If you were to increase that price of the beer to $3, the fall in the demand of the beer will not be as large as the increase in the price of the beer. In other words, people will continue to drink beer. So what we ought to do is to identify certain commodities in our system: alcohol, tobacco products, gambling, and put what is known as a sin tax on those products. Okay? In New York City, a pack of cigarettes that has 20 cigarettes in it costs 15 United States dollars. In Liberia, $1.50. And that 15 United States dollars in New York, lion's share of it is used for education and health care for the state. Okay, so we need to increase the taxes on these products, establish an education trust fund exclusively for education. Nobody has access to that money, so it's extra budgetary. In other words, we tax liquor, both domestically produced and imported liquor. We tax gambling, higher tax rates, excess tax, and tobacco products. We put those funds in a special education trust fund. Then we go to our partners, our donor partners, like the United States government and EU, and say, well, you know what? We have this trust fund, education trust fund. Can you match it? Instead of coming and trying to, throw your standard thing, match it or double it. And based on the numbers that we ran, me and my analysts ran, okay, we could do as much as in the first year, $70 million. If they matched it one for one, you're talking about $140 million. Okay? And we say exclusively for education. Then we need to find a way to manage that trust fund. Okay? And I have all the intricacies of proposals on how to do it. That's what, how can we fund our education system? But once we do that, then we'll have the funding for the schools and the equipment and the curriculum and all the things we need to do. You remember that the school I told you about, the boarding school that can take 2,000 students? That is the way to pay for them. That's the way to pay for them. And it's very, very important that we do it. And it's just exclusively because what happens is this particular scenario will not have a burden on other taxes that are collected. It won't. Okay. The challenge, of course, will be, well, then the Ministry of Public Works will say, well, we want some of that money to build roads. We want some, and then everybody will want to share. But we should do this exclusively for education. It's such a pivotal part of our future that I think we need to focus and do that.
Overall, sub-Saharan Africa spends 5% of their GDP on education, but it's second to North America and Europe that spends 5.3%. But I agree with you. It's not so much the funding as where it's placed. Goods and services.
Please let me interrupt you. Please. No, let me interrupt you. We need to stop using the indexes used by the West to measure our needs and our progress. We really need to stop that, because
according to the Ministry of Education, Liberia's educational spending for 2018 was 8% of the national budget, and in 2017 it was 8.2%, and then 2014 it was 6%. So it's going up, but the quality of education is not getting better.
What I'm saying to you, you're right. It's a two-track thing. Once you get it should be 15%. We should be spending more money on 8%. Why not education agriculture, which is renewable. Let me say something. It's a little bit different. We are heavily reliant on our extractive industries. Our natural resources are largely extractive: iron ore, diamond, gold, and whatever. You know what? It's going to finish. At some point in time, it's going to be exhausted. We need to invest in renewable resources. Education is renewable. Human beings is a renewable resource. Agriculture is a renewable. Those are the kinds of things we need to focus on. Step outside of the traditional box. Okay? We are exporting our natural resources, iron ore and everything, and we are adding absolutely no value. How is it we've exported rubber from Liberia since the 1920s, and we don't have one condom manufacturing or rubber gloves manufacturing, don't even mention tire facility in Liberia? How? Why?
So Ambassador, let me ask you this last question before we go to comments and the telephone. You saying that this money, this Liberia Educational Fund Trust left, right? That it should be managed out of the office of the president. Why? Why the president and not the Ministry of Education?
I said that it should be managed out of the office of the president on the condition that we haven't. Well, because no, I said that first of all, we should establish a board that's comprised of Liberian experts and those representation from whichever of our donor friends decide to sort of participate in this process. So they have, but the whole idea is if we can, something that really unfortunately needs to be micromanaged because of the absence of trust within the system. Look, let's not fool ourselves. Our system is totally corrupt. So we need to find a way to manage this. I'm not saying my ideas are the best. Okay, I'm saying we need to find a way to manage it so that the resources go where they are needed and they are used for the purposes that have been projected and planned. Okay. And the reason why I said maybe I should say it should be overseen by the office of the president. But it's a matter of having trustworthy technocrats to run a system like that.
Okay, can we have some comments? I think, or anybody want to call in to ask the ambassador some questions? Feel free. Leo says, please share now. A very interesting discussion tonight. Okay. So good to see you. Oh, Alex, how are you? You always okay. Thank you, Alex. Any other comments? How can I get one of the books? It's on Amazon, right?
Yes, it is on Amazon.
Yeah.
Just go to Amazon book and type my name in, and it will be there. Or type the title of the book. If you're in Liberia,
right brain.
Yeah. Yes. If you're in Liberia, it is available. There is a gentleman. His name is Chester Dennis. He's at the AMEU Graduate School. Chester Dennis. He has copies, and he'll make sure that you can get a copy.
Okay, so there's a question here. If you will make corruption and embezzlement a capital offense if you become president. First of all, are you running and will you make it?
I am running for the presidency come 2023. And let me tell you my opinion about corruption, okay? I told you that one of the first things that was paramount in terms of our challenges was we are not a reconciled people. The second thing is corruption. I am of the sentiment and the feeling that if my son was in Liberia and did something corrupt, he stole government money or something like that, I would say to him, son, I love you very much. I will find good legal advice for you, but you will have to pay the consequences of your action. If a person is found in a legal court, a court of jurisprudence in Liberia, the court find you guilty of corruption, I, Nathaniel Barnes, will not put you in a jail. I will put you under the damn jail. I feel that strongly about it, okay? Because let me tell you something. This thing has corroded our system. Corruption is not only institutional or systemic, it's psychological. People believe that in order to succeed, you have to cheat. In order to make it, you have to steal. When you're a government official, you are supposed to steal. That is nonsense. We just need to put in, we have rules, we have the laws, they're all there. We need to enforce the law. So whoever, regardless of who they are, no one is above the law. They have to pay the consequences of the action.
So Alex Jones say, we have promoted and elected academically challenged people and expect development and innovation. That doesn't make any sense at all. I think, Alex, we discussed this during the education portion of Focus on Liberia talks, that people like to say, oh, this person is a doctor and this and that, and we said, yeah, you can be literate, and literate means you can read and write. That doesn't mean you're an educated person. Reading and writing, literacy gives you,
that's very important.
yeah, it means to an education. Yeah, sorry, Prof. Yeah. So here it is. Yes, the next one. Oh no, that's it.
Okay. The reason, look, just because a person is illiterate doesn't mean they're stupid.
No.
Some of the wisest people I know can read a word, a letter. However, to move away from this educated thing and all of that, we do need educated and technocrats in our government. We need to do two fundamental things. We need to elect leaders. Stop electing politicians. We need, you come up as I'm perceived as a politician, but darn it, I'm a leader. I know how to solve problems without using rhetoric. Okay, that's the first thing we need to do. The second thing we need to do is begin to understand that, I keep coming back to the same thing, the three cardinal questions, and you have power. Okay, but we need to be a little bit more assertive and ask questions. The whole idea of just impunity. I wrote a paper some time ago, an article, Enough is Enough. Caused a lot of stir. People call and threaten me. What has happened? Nothing. Because people are not, you got to be in uproar about it. I'm not advocating violence, but you need to begin to ask some hard questions. Somebody is saying, who would transport them there? They're where?
Yeah, I don't know. There's another person asked, I don't know, this person, they want to know where you're living. I don't know.
I live in Liberia. I've been living in Liberia since 2010. Presently, I'm in the US. I'm visiting my children and my grandchildren. Okay. And I'm doing a couple of other personal things here. I will be back in Liberia next month in March. But I've lived in Liberia since I left my posting at Washington, D.C.
I don't understand the
I guess
question.
this person is.
Yeah, the money being available is the issue. Yes, that's what Ambassador Barnes is saying. Yes, his contributions are what he's saying now and what he has written in his book. Why do we Liberians give power to a bunch of unqualified people, then turn to those we haven't given the power to on what they can do? That's why they are running and asking Liberian voters to vote them into power. I don't understand. Gezima, could you just elaborate more on it?
I think what he's asking about. I think what he's asking about is the scenario I gave about moving kids to various counties where we have these large. Okay, well that's an easy thing, transporting them there. People that once we get the money, you can move a person to live in another county with no problems. That shouldn't be a problem. If they want to go vacation back home, give them. It can be done. I mean, that's.
These ideas can be a do by you or me instead of him. One day, man, we can do it too.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point he brings. Look, I am not trying to say that this is going to be easy. So anybody who is understanding me or saying that I think they would be easy, no, it's not. It's not going to be easy. It took many generations to get us to where we are right now, but it's going to take as many to change it. But every journey of 1,000 miles begins with that first step. Okay.
Yeah,
we have to take that first step.
And another thing is that when people are talking about changing mindsets and things like that, you talk about fight and flight, right? In your book, so it's almost like I guess the question then is education a common good? Like Rabbi Raj's book, A Common Good, the country has to agree. What is a common good? What is this thing that we need? If you have a portion of the people saying, oh, we don't need education, and the other half saying, oh, you need education, then there's a problem. There must be a consensus, if not 100%, at least maybe 80, a meeting of the minds to say this thing called education, it will move our country forward. It's a common good. I tell people, I say, I mean, one of my professors told me Japan has almost no natural resource, but Japan natural
Absolutely.
resource is up here.
That's right.
Education will carry the country forward.
That's
Yeah.
right. I see Thomas Johnson is asking about how do we make Liberian part of the body politic. I think that's an incredibly important question. I mentioned in my book that the two most important characteristics of the Liberia diaspora is, number one, politically, they're Liberia's 16th county, and economically, they're Liberia's middle class. First of all, we need to make sure we incorporate. You cannot talk about the future of Liberia. These are people that are remitting as much money as the entire Liberian government budget to Liberia, So you can't talk about the future of Liberia without incorporating the diaspora. We need to address the issue of dual citizenship. And we cannot isolate them. They are too important, okay? And, we are moving forward. We need to look forward, okay? This world, because of globalization, is a smaller place, okay? And the reason why people always like to compare Liberia and Ghana, and for example, the big coming back home or coming thing, is because they have adapted a paradigm, okay, that incorporates a more globalistic approach. And we need to consider, we need to do that. Okay, so we absolutely have to incorporate our diaspora into the Liberia existence, no doubt about it.
And what are your plans for growing the Liberian economy beyond a stagnant state?
We need to empower Liberians. We must empower ourselves. We must empower. There are too many things that we can do that we have expats doing for us. That is unacceptable. We need to push our government to empower Liberian business. There's nothing wrong with trying to create a middle class in Liberia, and that can only happen when you encourage entrepreneurs. There are one or two Liberian entrepreneurs that are doing really well now. Young Mr. Mahmoud Johnson, who has a J-Palm. This kid has just on his own done. We need to empower him. We need to empower Brenda Bush more. I mean, she is just these are young people that want to do well, but they don't have access, for example, to capital. We need to restrict markets for them. Every developed country in the world, they say you can't do that because of World Trade Organization. Nonsense. We will do what's best for us and what meets our interests. If it means doing set aside for Liberians, yes, let's do it. It meets our interests. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we signed the protocol for the world, the WTO, and all of that. True, but when it meets our interests, we need to pursue those things that are important to us. Okay, you say, well, you cannot isolate that. You cannot restrict importation of certain products. Well, everybody else did it. They still do it. There are some products you cannot import to the U.S. because you would be threatening American businesses.
Markets, yeah.
Why can't we do that in Liberia? We must take control. First of all, we must believe in ourselves. We must answer the three cardinal questions. What do we want? What must we do to get what we want? Are we ready and able to do what we must do to get what we want? All three are critical questions that we must begin to adapt into our national psyche. We can do this. They ain't no better than us. We can do it. Our kids are just as bright. As a matter of fact, Liberian youth, they're my heroes. These kids have made something out of nothing, out of some incredibly difficult times. I teach at the university, the graduate school at AMEU. I was at the university. I'm no longer at the University of Liberia. But I am amazed by how these young people come to class. They struggle to pay the school fees, okay? Many of the time they can't afford the books. I write the lectures and give it to them, okay? But they are tenacious, they are resilient. We need to embrace this stuff. and empower them. Let them do it. We can do this. We can do this. What we need to do is strong self-examination, lay all our skeletons out before us and say, okay, enough is enough. We're going to go this way. We're going to go right, and do it by empowering ourselves. Stop being so dependent on others. I sort of am tired of the excuse that, oh, we ain't got it. No. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. When life gives you rags, you make a quilt, for crying out loud. We make great quilts in Liberia.
Yeah, and
what did I
and
do
also,
when I served as what did I do when I served as finance minister under Taylor when corruption was at its peak? I remain honest. I led by example. I challenge, I dare any Liberian person to show me one instance where Nat Barnes was dishonest or corrupt or stole Liberian people's money. I dare anybody to show me the proof. I am so confident about that I can stand in this public manner and say that.
And Ambassador, one of the things that in that again, Thomas Friedman, he said, one thing also that will bring about this change is that the younger generation or the people now, they're not looking at their lives and comparing it to their parents to say, oh, my parents. They're looking at their lives and comparing it with their neighbors. How come he has that?
Absolutely.
I want
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. So when you start to see that, oh, my neighbor is doing this, I could do better, then the change comes also, because then people are willing to agitate for the change. Like, nobody wants to go. I hear people saying, oh, if you buy a hose and things and give it to, nobody wants to dig hole and all their life. Give them tractors, give them tillers, so the change will come. And I guess the question is Liberia at the jumping off point, right? Rosto says it takes 60 years. Are we at the jumping off point now?
I think
are we poised?
I think the young people are. I think the young people are. They are ready. What they need to do is to start to together make demands, begin to exploit and use their power and use it wisely. There's someone saying, hi, Ambassador Barnes, I'm listening to you, but just be truthful. I don't lie about things like these, my friend. When you are elected, in some to come. Okay, I don't understand that. But thank you for your advice. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and also in your book, I like the tributes, especially the one you did to Eugene Stevenson, because when I came as a Fulbright scholar, she was the ambassador at the time. And we did get to meet her. So I really like that.
She was an incredible lady. She was
you weren't
Mrs. Stevenson. She was at the embassy when there was no power at the embassy. In the middle of the winter, she would be sitting at her desk in a winter coat because of her patriotism and her belief in Liberia. So she was a personal hero of mine.
And you have tributes also to the Liberian nationals who died in the Philadelphia fire, to Mighty Barrow, to Ambassador David Thomas. I read the piece on Tubman. But I would urge everybody to please, we always say on a literary hour that we like for you to participate, read the book, and ask questions about the book. So here it is. It's Left Brain, Right Brain. Try and get a copy, and then you can write Ambassador Barnes also. And I think Dennis said there's a caller on the line. Dennis, is there a caller on the line?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we can take the call.
Caller, go ahead. Your name and where you calling from?
My name is Ains Uzualu. I call from Boston, Mass. How you guys doing? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Oh, thank you, Ambassador Barnes. It's a pleasure listening to you. Tremendous privilege to ask you this question. So I literally agree with everything you've spoken about. We have tremendous potential. Although I disagree with one thing about taking us so long to get to where we need to be, because it took us so long to get here. I believe in 20 years, if we have a proper government that does the right thing, we can turn this whole thing around. 20 years is the time frame for me. But I have a question for you, Ambassador Barnes. We have tremendous talent across the country or across the world now with Liberians. And most of the Liberians that can truly transform the country, they're staying away from the country for reasons best known to themselves. Sometimes some of them believe they cannot do what they want to do in Liberia because they are not in government. My question to you is, Mr. Barnes, how can we incorporate these people, get them into Liberia? Because I truly believe to truly transform the country is to get Liberia's best and brightest mind, not necessarily in government, but get them into the country and try to shake them up in a way where they can become the entrepreneurs. They can build institutions in the country to elevate this country. How do we get them to come home? I'm not talking about visiting. I'm talking about people like me who are guilty of this as well, to come into the country and to actually start promoting the elevation of Liberia. How do we do that? Thank you, sir.
That is an excellent question. And remember, Jackie, when I started earlier, I said we need to be quite radical in our approach. We need to turn the paradigm on its ears. I have the solution to that, to the gentleman's question, is we need to empower and expand the private sector, create opportunities that are real, doable opportunities for Liberians across the board in Liberia, in the diaspora, that have the energy, the intellect, the talent, the idea, the vision to come and implement it. But we must create an environment that will allow that. Okay. One of the things we need to do, and it's probably political suicide to try this, but I'll put it in another way. I was at a forum a couple of years ago, a Liberian government forum, economic forum, and I said to them, listen, the government is bloated. The government is bloated, okay? We need to fix it. One of the things we can do, and not only is it bloated, it's inefficient and ineffective. So what I suggest we do is two things. From assistant minister down in ministries should be technocrats, not political appointments, technocrats. We empower the civil service to search, recruit, vet, hire, and monitor those people to run our different institutions. And they are incented based on their productivity. They are hired based on their ability to produce and develop, okay? They are not hired because of their political affiliation, their ethnicity, their gender. They are hired because they can produce, okay? And we reduce the size of government and then encourage the private sector, okay, to absorb that excess that we're going to put into the system. Okay, you don't need thousands of employees to run the Ministry of Finance or the National Investment Commission or any of the institutions in Liberia. But the risk you take is if you reduce them, you downsize or right size, as they say, you are impacting unemployment. So you need to encourage and incent the private sector, okay, to absorb that. And the way to do that is simple, okay? Mr. John T. Yabawolo, he has a small company, Liberian-owned company. I say to him, listen, John, what do you do? He said, oh, I make rubber shoes. I make rubber shoes. I said, okay. How many Liberians do you employ? Well, right now I employ 10 Liberians. Okay. How much do you pay in taxes? Well, I pay 25% corporate income taxes. What if I say to Mr. John Yabawolo, listen, for every 10 incremental Liberians you employ, I will give you a 2% tax break. Okay. What happens is those 10 that he employed will pay taxes. So the opportunity cost that the government incurred, the 2%, is offset. But he takes that 2%, plows it back into his business and expands his business, and it grows. He employs more people. But to answer the question directly, we need to empower the private sector, okay, create avenues and areas, industrial areas that will allow them to grow, giving them the appropriate tax incentives and other business incentive, commercial incentives that will make them want to be there, that will make them want to produce. We insist on adding value to our exports, okay? We export raw timber. Why? Okay, we got some of the best timber in the world. Why aren't we making furnitures? Okay, it will take time, it will take investment, but I think with creativity and focus, I do agree with the caller that we could do this in 20 years to begin to see impactful turnaround. Okay, but it takes a matter of self-consciousness and the right leadership. Okay, and I believe, I told you, the best quality about we Liberians is we are resilient, we are tenacious, we know how to hang in there. Okay, and given the right motivation, we can do whatever we want to do. I believe that. It will take discipline. No. I'm saying it would be easy. I'm saying it would be monkey web baboon draw. No. We all got to get down and do it together. But it takes discipline, it takes focus, and it takes embracing the three cardinal questions. But I do agree with the caller that this can be done, but we need to do it. It will take sacrifice. It will take sacrifice. Things may get a little bit harder before they get better, but we need to remain focused.
And that's what Rostow said in his Economics of Growth, right? He says to get from the traditional society to that poise to take off, you need a revolutionary change, and not a lateral one, a vertical, but very revolutionary to be able to take off. Yeah. So we hope that our people are ready. We hope that the launch pad is being prepared and that we will take off. We hope that a lot of people will buy the book and read about what is happening, what should be happening, about changing the mindset, about knowing that they themselves, they are also guardrails for democratic norms, that Liberia is at a critical juncture, as they say in Why Nations Fail, they're at a critical juncture, and we don't want any more institutional drift, that we will be reining in and making our country want to be proud of. Dennis says we have one more caller before we wrap up. So, a caller?
Caller, go ahead. Go ahead, caller.
Ambassador Barnes, I'm calling in and I'm trying to inquire from you that you were saying that you want to take the power back to the people. You want the people to assume, their true role as being, the bastion of power in, the whole political scene. What I want to know is, what are your plans towards, decentralizing the government or doing away with this unitary form of government and allowing people at the grassroots to handle decision making? What mechanisms do you have as far as your plans?
Excellent question. It's simple. We need to empower our municipalities. There is no reason why the president of the republic should appoint the superintendent for a county. The people in that county should select who the superintendent should be, or local and municipal officials should be selected by the people. Because what happens in the scenario that we are using now is the loyalty of those officials is to Monrovia. Okay, when the people at the local level, at the village level, at the district level are responsible for selecting their leaders, the leader will begin to realize that their responsibility is to the people and not to some head of state in District Monrovia. I know, and we got to be pretty radical in the way we're thinking about this, because the answer is going to be, well, we don't have the funds to conduct elections. Okay. Well, we need to sort of reduce costs. Instead of buying $80,000 vehicles for our ministers of government, let's buy $40,000 vehicles and shift the cost, the cost savings elsewhere. But the short answer to your question is, at the local level, the people should be involved in selecting who their leaders are. If they do that, they will feel better ownership of their own destiny. But if that person is appointed and is coming from Monrovia to tell them what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, they believe that they have nothing to lose because that person there, he loyal to now, or he care about us. Okay, So we do need to sort of decentralize down, all the way down. Okay, the government, central government is just too centralized and too powerful. Okay, let the people that are supposed to be the government, for the people, of the people, by the people, let them have the power.
Yeah. Elijah D. Senior, working with the National Social Security and Welfare Corporation, and did a very good job at NASCO. Okay, Ambassador Barnes, people are lining up to tell you.
Yeah, by the way, Jackie, I've had a wonderful time with this discussion. I am so pleased to meet an avid reader like yourself.
Yeah.
And that's another thing we need to really, really encourage in Liberia, is people need to read. The kids need to read. Again, that's why Brenda
Yeah.
Moore is my hero. She has these reading rooms throughout the country. We try to help one way or another. My own foundation is building little computer labs, mini computer labs in disadvantaged and marginalized neighborhoods right now. We just finished the first one we're finishing the first one in Topo Village on the Somalia Drive there. We need to encourage our kids to read. Reading maketh a full person.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
I mean,
I'm so pleased.
we need a holistic approach to education. Reading education doesn't just take place in the classroom. I mean,
You're right.
I spent my entire life as a child working in my father's bookstore, National Bookstore. And that's where I started to read.
The issue. Now we know where you enjoy reading from. I
Yeah,
see.
reading
Okay.
all the time. So yeah. So we need to open libraries. We need Brenda's reading rooms, and she's doing a phenomenal job. We invited her here at the university, and she came and she visited and told us about her work. So we really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us, a busy night.
If you allow me, let me do a little spiel for myself. My wife
no,
and I
no,
just,
I wasn't going to end. I was going to say the last word is up to you now.
no, I didn't want to tell you. My wife and I just finished another book. It's a meditational. It's called Believer's Journey, and it more or less is what we've done is my wife and I have been together forever. We've been married for over 40 years, and what we did was we just took the Bible and went through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation and picked our favorite passage from each book in the Bible, and then did a little narrative on what it means to us and how it's impacted us in our lives and our spiritual growth. And so it's from Genesis to Revelation, and it's been a wonderful challenge because it's a reflection of our own spiritual growth together over 42 plus years. So that should be coming out soon, and I'd like for you to tell me what you think about it when you get a chance to read it. It's called Believer's Journey.
Oh, I like the title already. One of the things we discussed at the literary hour was that when I interviewed Dr. Tipote, we kept lamenting the fact that people like Bacchus Matthews and now Dr. Emma Sawyer, they did not write autobiographies for people to read and learn about specific time in Liberia's history. Are you thinking about writing one?
Yeah. Once I'm done with my public service, I intend to go to Lake Shepherd or Lake Piso, build a little cabin there on the lakeside and write my memoirs one of these days. So I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, there's work to be done. We got to change Liberia.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And as I said, any last words before we leave?
Well, I just want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you to the Liberian people, for giving me the opportunity to serve them. I've been serving Liberia for a long time now. And I appreciate the opportunity. I admonish you to remember you have power. Use your power. Use it wisely. We don't want to fall into the abyss. It's time to pull ourselves together and fully embrace the three cardinal questions. What do we want?
What do you want?
What do we want? What must we do to get what we want? Are we willing and prepared to do what we must do to get what we want? I love you, Liberia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ambassador Barnes, and thank you for making time, as I said, to join us. We hope you will join us next time to talk about your book, about once it's done with Mrs. Barnes, and I hope to see you in Liberia when I get there.
I'm going to be there very, very soon. Coming.
Yes, yes. Okay. And
Okay.
thank you.
God
And
bless.
thank you, viewers, for staying with us and for asking questions. And as we end, we always say, whether you have read his book, whether you haven't read his book, whether you are ruled by the left side of your brain or ruled by the right side of your brain, or you've merged the two, we are all Liberians. Let us not forget, let us, as we always say, lift Liberia up. We are the rooms, Liberia is the roof. Lift Liberia up. So good night, stay well, and stay safe. Thank you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia, we want. Liberia, we want. Liberia. Why